Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm here with Shayna Smith of Smith and Associates. How are you, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. I'm here with Mr. Troy Christopher of JTV Live.
Good evening.
Even I'm here with Ms. Dana Lewis Ambrose of HLSCC.
Good evening, Cromwell.
Yes, good to see you.
Same here.
Yeah, you need to make your co-host. You've probably been on the show more times than anybody else.
And every time I come on the show, you say the same thing.
This is
You don't follow up on the promise.
Lord Jesus.
Are they
You're
awful?
bad.
Put
You're
your
bad.
back.
You're bad.
Put your back.
It's okay. We
That's a
good.
good
We
push
good.
right.
Yeah, try one side with you because this is your baby. Business disruption.
Well, you call it business disruption. It's a catchphrase. It's really disruption, you call it. And it's not necessarily something new, but because of the pace of it right now, there's quite a bit of information being written about it. The basic concept is when a new way of doing things shows up, and that new way is faster and most of the time cheaper than the way you have been doing things in your business. And you find it difficult to adjust to the new way of doing things. They normally say your business is being disrupted. Sometimes the new way of doing things or delivering a service is specifically targeted to your business model. And sometimes you're not aware of it. Sometimes you don't know how deep it runs. And before you know it, you find it very difficult to stay in business. And this is something that I've been researching for some time. And I've been noticing it. I think we all have been noticing it. But we don't know how much it is affecting the businesses in the BVI and how much it will affect our businesses, because it has been affecting a lot of global businesses. And so the question would be whether we're paying enough attention to it and are we prepared?
Well, that's interesting because since you and I have been discussing this, I have looked back over my business. Not my business here, but my business in New York, where new technology came in, and I didn't make a transition fast enough. And I didn't think of it as disruption. I just thought of it as that I just lost customers, you know, and not realizing that there's new technology, things are changing. I'm not keeping up with the technology because sometimes you can't afford it right away. You're too slow to respond to the market demands. You're too slow to respond to the changing trends, and you just get left behind.
That's so. And again, this is happening all the time. It's just the pace of it. I know one of the areas that we might remember being talked about a lot is a lot of the international newspapers going out of business.
Yes.
Paper itself
Yes.
going out of business. And the internet revolution was blamed for that. It was a faster way of delivery, and it was cheaper to a great extent. And it provided some of the same experience if it was to deliver news or information. It was provided, and a lot of companies found it very difficult to maintain their print production model, where you have to print on paper and run this machinery and cover their costs. So some companies who have been able to see it coming, make the transition, have been able to continue with that business model. It may mean that you have a smaller share of the market. There's still a market. There's still people who interested in doing it the way that you liked it
Who
on
want to
paper.
have a hard copy?
Yeah, magazine industry, the same thing, having the same issues. And everybody knows about the music industry,
Yes.
which was significantly disrupted.
Blindsided.
The company Napster, well, I don't know whether to say there was a company or not, but they created a model, and people started to download MP3 files, and everybody would, at that time, was trying to make a transition from the cassette deck to the CD, which was what we figured was the normal chain. You know, you move from the records, or maybe the 8-track, then you go to the records, and then you go to the cassette, and then you went to the CD, and then all of a sudden these things come out of the blue for the record industry, and all of a sudden everybody was being disrupted by, music for free at a significantly reduced cost. Artists are not necessarily being paid the kind of monies that they accustomed are.
So artists are forced to perform more.
Artists are forced to perform more, and
Record sales is not a big
record
deal.
sales are significant, a major problem.
Yeah.
And so, it's the disruption is the phrase that they use, not necessarily the evolution from CD to DVD or within the same structure, but when the whole structure seems to fall from under you. And that's what we're talking about.
Okay. Now, let me bring in Shayna here. Shayna, you have a workshop that's coming up, right? The Caribbean Development Bank Network, in collaboration with BVI Tourist Board, is presenting marketing techniques for small hotels.
Yeah.
Now, do you see how do you see your workshop fitting into what Troy is talking about? Is it helpful, or are we wasting our time with workshops about marketing?
No, that's very in the same vein, because one of the things now, in terms of when you're looking at business disruption and being more proactive about it, where he mentioned about technology changing. So in whatever industry you're in, it's important to know what are the trends that are out there that are coming, and to even go beyond that now, to think about what even somebody might think about tomorrow and how it would affect us. So when we talk about now hospitality industry here in the BVI, we're basically participating in a global environment. So what CDB has done now with these workshops that they're doing is that they want to equip business persons, especially smaller businesses, in the area of marketing, as far as why marketing is important, what it is first off. Because some people think it's just about advertising, but in a business model, you have 3 areas that you really need to be paying attention to, regardless of the size of your business. And those are marketing, sales, and operations. So marketing is where you put your business or your services, your products out there so that persons can know about them. So that's the first thing. So and where are our customers? Our customers are around the world. So even as a small property or a small hotel or villa, guest house, you need to be putting yourself out there as far as marketing, because now you're competing with the rest of the world, the rest of the Caribbean regionally, locally, and on a global stage. So it is something where it's important that they feel that you're able to continue to exist, as Troy pointed out. If you don't stay on the front end of it, you're gonna end up eventually having to close out.
But within the field of marketing itself, and I've had this experience within the field of marketing itself. There are disruptions.
Yeah.
Because when you would buy a spot in a newspaper, and you would buy a spot on TV, buy a spot on the radio.
Yeah.
And that was the regular marketing techniques. You call around on the phone and you do some research.
Yeah.
And you find out where the customers are, who's buying what the trends are, and try to cater to those services, those demands. Now you got social networking.
Exactly.
You got the online. That's the online
example.
media. You got a whole slew of outlets and marketing resources that you have to become not only knowledgeable about,
more savvy in.
And you got to know how to physically use them.
Yeah.
Because no longer are you giving instructions to somebody, go on Facebook and do this for me.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you got to go on
You have
Facebook
to
and
be
do
the
it,
one
and be one to do it
updating your
yourself. So you
page.
got to know the technology.
Yeah,
You got
sure.
to.
Not only that, sometimes it's difficult to adjust. You would remember when the typewriter was a big factor, and everybody was using that, and then computers came in. Some of the companies who were producing the best typewriter machines, they could not find a way to readjust to the computer. So Microsoft Word, or I think it was Word Perfect or whatever
Yeah.
Yeah, the
created a
processor.
problem for them.
Yeah.
And some of the reasons were because they had a number of manufacturing plants that were built out to make these typewriters in mass volume. They had an overhead debt, and when they looked at how much money they would make from producing that software, it was very negligible compared to what they would make from the typewriters. And they tried. Sometimes some people say they waited too late and all kind of different things, but sometimes there's a lot of different reasons why you can't get to that new model
Yeah.
within a quick enough space. Recently, we've seen this happen to a company who we all use, a lot of us use, which was BlackBerry. And BlackBerry was one of the leading companies. If you remember, and I'll show you how fast this happened. When Barack Obama entered the White House, they were thinking about how they would encrypt his BlackBerry. He
Yes.
was saying that he was addicted to
The BlackBerry.
The BlackBerry.
Using it,
and BlackBerry had the lion's share of the market at that time. As a matter of fact, I don't think the iPhone was even out.
Right.
And at this point in time, BlackBerry, specifically in the US, probably has less than 1% of the market. And a number of different companies have, from Google to Samsung, to Apple, have been are now the leaders.
Even
So
Nokia
yeah.
resurgent.
Even Nokia, and Nokia is hanging on. Microsoft just bought them because even Microsoft was caught off guard with this trend. And the concern or the question that I have, and the question I think that we all should be asking ourselves, is if we see this happening to a lot of these companies in the US and around the world, what type of effect is it having on our businesses in the BVI? And how are we going to be affected by these trends?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that's I think that's the complete thrust of the next few minutes of the discussion, because we want to be able to identify those disruptions here in the territory, so that we as business people get a sense of what the challenges are. Now, Dana, you got a new job, right? Now you're a lecturer, but tell us about your new job.
Well, I'm the coordinator for the Center for Professional Development and Community Education. And what we do is we provide solutions to issues that we can foresee as training needs or technical assistant needs within the BVI community. So we put on workshops as well as other type of courses, as well as technical assistance, where we can bring people in and actually counsel them or work with them and help them to improve their business over time.
Yeah. And of course, this is at HLSCC.
Yes, so this is at HLSCC, of course.
Yeah. And I don't remember whether you said it or not. I just didn't hear it. So
The thing is that the title is so long, you know,
Yeah.
the HLSCC, but I just assume everybody understands that it's a part of HLSCC.
It's part of the market. You got to keep mentioning the
Yes.
name over.
Yeah.
Of course.
But the question for me is how are you looking at that concept of disruption, and how would a college like HLSCC mitigate challenges that could come up to that institute that coordinated in the development of new courses and looking to the community and seeing what the community needs and having to, well, let me just ask you, what are some of the things that some of the factors that you're competing against, not only on a local stage, but particularly on an international stage, and
Right.
particularly in regards to the internet?
Well, as you would know that we're right next door to the University of the Virgin Islands. It is a university, we're still a college, but we do see that they are advertising within the BVI, which is key in terms of they recognize that there's a market here and they're trying to capture it as early as possible. And so inevitably they become somewhat our competitors. Now, we can also try to bridge that by working with the UVI to have students begin their associate degree program their college degree program here and then transfer to the UVI. Now, that's one way of trying to solve the issue of competing with them. The same thing would work
So
for
cooperation.
Yeah, cooperation,
as
forming
opposed
a
to competition.
partnership. Yes, same thing would be for University of the West Indies, which, as you know, has now an online campus, right, where people can actually do degrees from the BVI using technology, using the internet, have access to all the equipment or tools that are now available to have persons lecture in one part of the world and you be able to view it, you be able to communicate with them directly, etc. So that is one way that we can try to bridge that gap and not create what I would consider a fighting war over if we get this student or if so on. So we need to form those types of partnerships. And I see that that is something that the business community can also do within the BVI rather than trying to fight for customers or clientele. And it could work on various fronts. It just needs more discussion and perhaps more dialogue between the necessary parties.
And coordination.
And coordination, of course. And this is where I think public-private partnerships are key, because if you know exactly what direction the government is headed, the private sector can have conversations with the government. It can start to curb a lot of these issues that we foresee. Competition, persons having the access to purchase things online and get them at a much cheaper price than if they buy them in the BVI. That is something that hasn't been happening before, but it's happening much more now. And there's reasons for that, because times are much tighter. People have limited funds and financing, and people are just trying to find ways to getting their dollar stretch. And so you're going to find more and more of that happening. And so I think we can, if we can have more dialogue between the private sector and government on how we can work to try to, circumvent some of these things from having a devastating impact on, and I would say the businesses I think are most vulnerable are the smaller ones. The larger businesses have room to adapt to whatever changes
And
are
resources.
required in the business environment. So this is where more discussion needs to take place, and perhaps put into place programs or areas where support now could be available for those very vulnerable businesses within the BVI.
All right, Troy, Dana is singing a tune, a duet out of your Sankey.
Well,
Very much so.
How is the internet seem to be a major disruptor?
well, there's a couple of things with what Dana said. A lot of it is good in that the relationship between business and government, that partnership, that understanding of what makes the economy function. That's an important relationship. But what's interesting is that oftentimes a lot of the bigger businesses who we figure have the ability to absorb the blows, they are so slow to turn around because of their size.
Yeah.
It's one of the things we saw happen with IBM. Sometimes a big organization can't shift. They have so much investment, they have so much,
Can't turn the
Let's
tanker
stop.
so fast.
they can't get it turned around. And to be nimble and small and shift around and
Advantage.
retool and restaff is easy. And so that's something to bear in mind as well. But- go ahead.
Oh, sorry, you go.
One of the direct challenges that I think that we are going to be having would be how the economy functions, and when the disruption happens, who is affected. Because right now we enjoy seeing lower prices. We enjoy having the newer, faster way the consumer does. And the consumer may not realize that their jobs are the ones that is going to
Being
be on the line,
jeopardized, yeah.
being jeopardized. It's really easy to want to cut out the middleman until you realize the middleman is your business and your company. And the government is making commitments to all the kids that come out of school, and they're asking the ones that haven't found jobs, they're asking the businesses to hire them and support them. So it's an interesting dynamic, specifically if you don't look at it. And if you don't be careful, even the government suffers. The model used to be that 20 years back, if you wanted access to a country's market, their people, their citizens, BVI had 30,000 residents. If you wanted access to that market, you apply to government for a license to do business. The government says to you, well, you're going to have to agree to hire locals, those kids that we're talking about coming out of school, or trained citizens. You pay taxes to help fix the roads, hospitals, schools, whatever. The internet have allowed companies to
Come in.
do business right out of your country without hiring one local.
without paying anything,
Without setting
without making any contribution.
I won't say they're not paying anything, but I would say that some of the key places that you really wanted them to participate in, it's not always obvious that they're making that type of contribution. Because you could argue that there's some contributions that's made just by having the internet model, but the country itself loses so much before you have time to readjust. And the government has models, that levers that they use to decide what type of taxes is going to be paid based on a ratio. And sometimes these things happen and the government doesn't respond fast enough, or the businesses don't respond fast enough. Or even if you make the argument that technology is going to happen and we need to change, the question is, are we making the transition? Are we prepared to make the transition to whatever the new paradigm is? And one of the biggest examples for me would be, if I leave my smartphone at home, more than likely I have to go for it. That's how important it is for me. This is how, all the communication me and you have, Shayna sent me emails about different things we're talking about. It happens on my phone or my iPad. So the question becomes, when we look at our schools and our school system, are we teaching mobile devices and the current structure of business that not only is the present, that seems to be the future? Are we training our kids to use these devices, design apps for them in the App Store? Are we going to be participating, or are we still behind because we haven't realized that this is the future? It's here, it's now, it's critical.
Okay, we gotta take a break for a word from our sponsors. But when we come back, I want us to do analysis, and everybody could share their portion of what they seen as being disrupted. And I think it's safe to use the internet as the focal point, because in my view, and I don't know what your views are, but in my view, I see the internet as a major disrupting force for all businesses. And so we need to look in the BVI and see what businesses are being disrupted and how are those businesses being disrupted, and what are possible solutions to some of that disruption. Because it may very well be that we might just have to not sell anything here at all and just have an internet-based company where people ordering from us and we getting it from someplace else and shipping it. So you get on Amazon and you buy something and some company somewhere in Kalamazoo ships it, to you. The person, the Amazon is not shipping nothing to you.
Well,
You know?
when you finish
When we
with
go,
the break,
yeah, we don't want to give the whole thing. Don't want to give the whole thing away, right?
that provides a lot of challenges as well.
Yeah. So we're gonna take a break. Keep it locked right here in the spotlight. We're gonna come right back with more of this discussion right after these words from our sponsors.
Spotlight is brought to you by Tortola Concrete Limited, Clarence Thomas Limited, and H. Lavity Stout Community College.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm Ed Juenka, and if you've just joined us, you have missed quite a bit. But lucky for you, JTV Spotlight is on JTVLive.net. JTV Spotlight is on JTVLive.net on demand. So you can go to JTVLive.net and you can catch any spotlight that you've missed or any part of this program that you've missed. But we've been talking about disruption, and specifically about business disruption and how various changes and trends in the world are affecting businesses, and how we need to adjust to these changes in order to continue to survive. And of course, the BVI is bearing the brunt, I think, of disruption of business from our sectors, whether it's investors coming in and gobbling up our market share, or just the internet, just being able to sit down on your iPad in your bed and order up shoes from Taiwan or Korea or something, and have it delivered to you in a week and a half. We're going to talk about, we're going to try to analyze the situation in the BVI and see where is this disruption taking place, in what sectors, and perhaps how to deal with some of these challenges. Where are we seeing the disruption in the BVI?
Okay, in terms of when we talk about business disruption, I think one of the best ways to define it is a paradigm shift. And from a business perspective, if I would say, let's say I'm advising a client about, these are the changes that we're seeing in your industry. For example, access to the internet. And if you know that you can access clients and customers now through the internet, it wouldn't be necessarily that you close your storefront, but you might want to think about having an online store to expand your market share and provide your services to existing as well as new customers through there. Because then it's something where it's reduced expense for you in a sense, and at the same time you're able to reach beyond physical boundaries. So I think it's one of those things where, depending on where you're at and what you're looking at, from a business owner perspective, it's always important to look at where are the opportunities when the paradigm starts to change. So where you might have a business type, like say, for example, Clovers. Clovers has a store. This is a generational business for families. But maybe the next shift for them would be to actually have their shoes offered online. And that is something where it helps them to maintain that stability as far as growing the business, and not just it being, as more persons with another store opens up, or we continue to shop online, we have choices. But if you're able to give me, raise the bar, so to speak, at that level where, I can go to Clovers online, clovers.com versus jcpenney.com, and pick up in the store. Because that's one of the things where when internet became that new trend in terms of changing the way that customers were able to shop, then businesses had to change the way that they presented themselves out in the marketplace. So then, JCPenney, you can go now order online and pick it up in the store. So I still want to be able to check it maybe before I take off with it, versus when it gets home, something's wrong with it and I have to send it back. So it's for us to look at some of the opportunities that might present themselves as businesses, and especially as Dana referred to as small businesses, to be able to maintain that presence that you have and to continue to grow and expand. Because it presents itself a lot of opportunities when it comes down.
Now, those are solutions. Let's talk about some challenge.
Well, I'm going to cover maybe a little bit of the challenges, because it's interesting that both universities and the company Shana just mentioned, JCPenney, are complaining about disruption. But we're gonna get to that, because this thing is affecting everybody. If you were a IT company, or let's say you're a retailer that you sell computers, for instance, and 20 years ago you would try to become a distributor for a major brand, whether that be Lenovo, IBM,
Apple.
Whatever
The case may be.
the case may be. And in that scenario, you were protected by the agreement that you had. You would repair the computers when they went bad. You have trained staff to service those computers. You have products on the shelves. You have Microsoft Windows on the shelf, QuickBooks on the shelf. All of these.
All the services you
all
need
the
to serve
services that you need to
for
go
those
along
for that brand.
with these brands. But with the new shift, we're seeing that the mobile devices don't follow that same pattern. What's happening is that the companies have decided to sell those devices directly to the consumer, the ones who are actually producing the devices.
I could go to an Apple and buy an iPad, buy an
Online.
iPhone, and buy a MacBook Pro directly.
And in some situations, it has become real interesting in that we all know that Google, the company that makes the Android operating system, which right now probably has about 80% of the market, Apple, who makes the iOS operating system, both of these companies have online stores. So no longer on the new platform do you go into a store and buy a box that you install on your computer. You purchase those directly from over the internet from those stores. Not only do you purchase the apps, you purchase the device. And sometimes, as Shana was trying to say, well, maybe you could create your own store, or maybe Infinite Solutions needs to get an online store where they could provide those devices. But that's where the difficulty comes in what the new paradigm is presenting. I was reading an article that was done by the Guardian newspaper in the UK, and UK businesses were complaining about this problem. And this is the article head. I'm going to see if they can bring it up on the screen. It says Google's Nexus 5, which is their new phone, Play Store, this is what they call the online store, the price undercuts the wholesale cost. Their new device in their Play Store, their online store, is undercutting the price, the wholesale price that they sell it to the retailers for. So when the consumers try to buy it, the article says the company's £300 starting price for smartphones is around $50 less, £50 less than its own online shop. So what's happening is that the company that's producing the device, that's selling it to you, they are selling it $100 less almost than what they are selling it to the retailers for wholesale. How are you going to compete with that
Which I was about to
in
say.
an environment where we're all online
Yeah.
and you can compare within a close environment? How is that possible for you to compete
to do business.
when the person who's selling it to you
It's selling it cheaper.
is selling it to you at a higher price?
Yeah.
They are not only selling it, they themselves are selling it, and they're selling it at a lower price than they are
selling it to you for. Yeah. And selling it to your customers.
and selling it to
Your
your customers.
Yeah.
And this is presenting a significant challenge. One of the hot new devices is the Amazon Kindle, or the Kindle Fire HD. And how this is set up is that Amazon is forcing everybody to buy it online. And they have restrictions that you could only buy 2 devices a day or a week or something like that. So even if as a business you wanted to say, well, let me just order it from Amazon,
And resell
make it and resell it and make it available
No.
in the BVI
You,
for,
you have to have a big you have to have a big family in each but
you have to have,
Different name.
you have to have several people
Yeah.
ordering because there are restrictions to prevent this. And then the real issue that you're faced with shows up, which is your doing business costs. Meaning that you have,
electricity.
apart from shipping, because everybody might have to pay that, but you have rent for your business.
Yeah.
You have your employees that you've trained, that you have to provide that excellent service, and you have to find their salaries. And you have the electricity costs. I heard them in the House of Assembly today, talking in the appointment around Potter how they're hoping that the electricity
things,
costs in the
electricity.
BVI can come down. So businesses in the BVI have doing business costs that they can't figure out what they're going to do with this doing business costs.
Yeah. Where they gonna add it on?
Where they're going to put it if we're all online and Shayna can access it. I mean, that's not going to happen, and that's where the real challenge is going to really show its face, and it's going to be a little tricky to see how we address that problem.
Let me hear what Dana. What's your take on what Troy is saying and what Shayna is saying?
Actually, I think they've made two very good points in terms of what is happening and what are the opportunities or ways that you can address them. Troy was just talking about electricity costs, and we all know that that is a major nightmare for most businesses. But there's an alternative there, which is called alternative energy. And the direction that I can see that needs to take place is that you move away from fuel-based or oil-based ways of producing energy and move towards solar and other formats of energy. And I know Troy might be there saying, well, that's another disruption there. But it also has benefits for the environment in terms of reduction in carbon footprint. And it allows businesses to now try to reduce their costs. Of course, we can say that the initial investment tends to be high. But from my recollection of businesses that have gone in that direction, they can tell you that there is a significant reduction in the cost of operations, and it changes your whole perspective of life, and it gives you a sense of wanting to leave something there for future generations. It makes you feel much better about who you are as a person.
That if you get saved.
No, you don't have to get saved to feel that way. But I think it makes you more socially responsible,
Well,
and that is a conversation, maybe not for tonight, but
I'm not. I hear what you say completely, but it's difficult and interesting because people are money driven. So the more you need to have money to spend, the less you're thinking about environmental issues. That seems to me like there's some mutual exclusivity between your having all your needs met and worrying about something else.
Well, there's an argument that could be made about the cost of both of those things if the consumer is driven by price. And the question becomes, if alternative energy was significantly cheaper, why aren't the consumer jumping on it?
Yes.
And that's because at this point in time it may not be. It's better in the long run, it's more environmentally friendly. But the point for me is not to try to pretend like disruption isn't going to happen, or to hide under the blanket from disruption, or try to say, well, maybe we shouldn't embrace the new way of doing things. The challenge is, are we moving fast enough to understand how fast the disruption is happening? Because we have an economy to think about, and we know that the more people participate in that economy, the stronger the community is, right? And again, you have a number of kids coming out of school. They're wondering whether those new opportunities are going to be.
What can the government do?
I think that both the public sector and the private sector needs to monitor it very, very closely. One of the challenges that I know a number of businesses have complained about is that they feel that their license to do business in the BVI doesn't give them any advantage for the contributions that they feel that they're making. If they're going to be committed to paying taxes and hiring people in high-end BVI landers or whoever,
and giving back to the community,
on the ground, they feel that there should be some advantage to encourage that. And we have some things that I think personally we have to look at
Like
in terms
what?
of that context. Well, I'll give you an idea. What is the reason for duty that we pay? If I'm a company that sells refrigerators, and I spend $100,000, I get a loan from the bank or get some credit or whatever, and I purchase refrigerators, and you charge me 20% duty on those refrigerators. What's the purpose that I'm paying the 20%? What is the reason? Most of it is for a tax purpose. They're saying money has left the economy and they're taxing me. Now, that was a great concept if we had refrigerators being produced locally, and so you're punishing me for shopping overseas. But if we don't produce that product and we have to import the majority of things that we have, then the question would be, why would it be the same rate for me and for a resident? But let me make another point. The next point is, even before I sell those refrigerators, I have already paid 20% of that $100,000 loan that I have taken in duty. So what happens if I end up selling that refrigerator at a loss because it's not moving, or I have to sell it below what I anticipated? Government has already gone with their
20%.
Their 20%. So who's carrying the strain of this economy, of all of those things? The businesses can't see why this trade license would be so valuable if somebody else could either get on a boat, put the same device, or put the fridge or TV on the boat, bring it up from St. Thomas, and may not even give customs the right bill. Where we can't get away from the true cost, the consumer,
In all other overhead. The cost of doing business.
and then you still have your doing business cost. So that relationship.
So the government need to cut down on those duties.
I don't want to use the word cut down or say what it actually is. A lot of people are advocating for a two-tier system. A lot of other countries, developed countries in the world, have two-tier system. Some countries don't charge the duty at that point. They might charge the duty at the point of the sale. That way, I don't have a loan carrier.
You have a sales tax.
That's right. Even if that refrigerator does not sell, I don't pay at that point.
You don't pay till it sells.
I don't pay till it sells. So there is a number of different things that can be looked at in terms of a formula that keeps people hired, employed, everybody participating in the economy. So those things have to be looked at. But the other point of it, from the preparation point of view, is that there are requirements that a lot of the hotels, internet companies might have in terms of these new devices in tech. So I'm sure all of the villas need an app, or would like somebody to design an app for them, or help them with that transition. If we're all going to be researching on the internet and their business needs to show up there, the question is, are these the types of classes that we are having? If this is the future,
So we educate our children to
perform,
to deal in this particular
That's
new
correct.
change.
That's
this
correct.
new shift.
Or are we still hung up on the fact that we think these devices are distractive, or we don't think that we should have them in schools, or we're not sure? And those are the real things. If this is the real world you're living in, and all of us on the table have these devices, and we know how important they are for us, why aren't we training our kids specifically
How to use it.
how to not only use them, but how to design software and program specifically for these devices? So there's a number of different areas, and that's just a little bit of the things that
We've fallen on turning the clock. We're gonna need some more time, but certainly I think the business community needs to take the lead in making representations for partnership with the government in order to start investigating this new trend, this development of disruption. Because if everybody start ordering out the internet, and the businesses all go out of business,
as long as they have internet.
But
not
the
happening.
the only problem with that is that once the businesses go out of business, you ain't gonna be able to order on the internet because you ain't gonna have no
Yeah,
job, you ain't gonna have no money.
True that.
I've seen a trend in the US to have the mobile devices that have the cameras on them. You can click on your phone and access a doctor, and they will come up on the screen, and you can have a conversation with a doctor anywhere in the world about issues that you might be having. And a lot of countries are looking at this carefully because it might mean that a lot of the local doctors who may have consulted with you, your people now have access to a lot of doctors across the world that they might choose to use. I've seen it in the legal profession where a lot of things that you might want done for you, it's a lot of different places.
Well, you could
It's
consult.
a lot of different
You could
places,
you could
so-
consult with a doctor in France, for example, that you happen to know of,
Yeah.
and some particular ailment that you have. You could consult with that doctor online, send him a check with your credit card, and have a consultation, and he give you a remedy, and you follow the prescription, and you deal with the certain issue that you may
Again, the
have.
challenge is to how do you adjust yourself for new technology. You're not going to get away from it. The question is, are you prepared? Are you aware of what all is happening?
Well, you got a
Marketing
marketing.
techniques for small hotels, small
Yes.
properties, guest houses, villas. This will be next week, starting from next week, Monday to Friday, Treasure Isle Conference Room. It's going to be 9 to 4. We have local facilitators, Jamila Vanterpool and Saskia Barnes, some of the best in the business, I think, here
Yes.
in BVI. That would be, coming alongside small hotel business owners or whoever does their marketing for them to train them in, becoming market savvy, basically, and to up their game. It's free. Lunch will be provided. All they'll have to do is contact myself to register, 541-1192, or they can pick up a form at the tourist board office.
We are getting all this money from you. The left.
See,
Saskatchewan, get some like to go and talk about free stuff, and now you giving free stuff.
This is all Caribbean Development Bank. Also to put out there, persons from the sister islands, accommodations and transportations is covered. So all they have to do again is register, and all of that will be taken care of where they can come down and stay for the workshop for the entire week and go.
Cool. And that's on the 25th to the 29th
Yeah.
of November this month. This weekend, right?
Starting on Monday.
That's on Monday.
Yeah.
Dana got a Dana got a new book. Dana, your new book, Moving from Infancy to Young Adulthood, a contemporary review of the development of the Virgin Islands. So you're talking about the Virgin Islands moving from infancy to young adulthood. You think
Yes.
we're in young adulthood now?
Of course.
Oh yeah.
And that's
Tell us a little bit about the book and your motivation and what you're trying to accomplish. What's the goal of the book?
I've been conducting research from as far back as 2007, and you would have been privy to some of that research. I think I started off looking at price control, and
Yes.
I started then to delve into globalization, which is part of the conversation when we talk about business disruption. And then I teared into regional integration and how the BVI relates to external bodies, regional bodies, as well as what are some of the issues that we need to look at if we are seriously going to be talking about national development and nation building. And so it's a compilation of research done between 2007 to 2013, and it covers a lot of the progress that I have seen that the territory has done or has achieved over that short period of time. And it's interesting that, sometimes you would be in an environment and not really see the different things that are happening around you. But I think it really gives snapshots of ideal points or things that I think are particularly key when you're talking about moving a nation forward and people becoming more proud and feeling good about being a Virgin Islander, right? And so the book is out there. It's selling all over the world, to be quite honest.
Okay, where can we get it here?
Well, it's not presently being offered here, but it will be at HLSCC bookstore within the next couple of weeks.
And can you get it on online?
Of course, you can get it online. So,
Can you get
disruption, right?
Can you get it on iBooks?
Of course, you can get it on
iBooks because that's what's right way I'll get it.
And you know what's funny that we didn't talk about is that we look at a lot of the disruptions that's happening at BVI,
Right.
but we may be aware that the BVI is considered to be a major disruptor with our
To
financial
other-
services
yes.
industry
Yes.
globally.
Yes.
That's an interesting
over
point.
the last 20 years. So
Yes.
we are on both sides of this
Right.
this
Yes.
industry,
Yeah.
and we are considered to be a major disruptor. And the key point that I wanted to make is that where sometimes we sit down and we accept the fact that, well, this is a new trend, maybe we're going to lose this money. You notice that these countries who
They ain't accepting that.
that's right.
Of
They-
course.
It's okay for them to disrupt, but it's not
that's
okay
right.
for us to
When we come up
disrupt.
with a formula globally that's working,
Yeah.
they attack us. They come up with every excuse to.
They bring their guns blazing.
They're coming to get the money.
Yeah.
And so they're not going to allow it to happen. And I think we need to have that type of same attitude as well to
Aggressive.
safeguard, the territory. So it
Excellent.
cuts both ways. It's,
Yes.
it's the
Excellent
global
point.
world. I
Yes.
mean.
Excellent, excellent point. Certainly a lot of food for thought, and it's a truly an important discussion. I think tonight. Do you want to have the final word? Or
No,
you had it already?
I think
You
that's
had it already?
that's it. My thing basically, there's a lot of ground to cover. I'm sure that we discussed a number of things, but being aware and business and government coming together. I'm encouraging all the local businesses to come together and look at what is required. Talk about what's happening in their environment and see what's going to be coming on the horizon.
How they can
Yes.
cooperate for
And
their
to-
own
and
success.
to make
Yes.
sure that we're prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all.
And I think I'm gonna give myself the last word. For our country, there needs to be we need to consider a serious symbiotic relationship between government, business, and labor. That they have a harmonious working relationship for the good of the whole territory. And I think that's important, and we need to really start looking at that concept of that type of relationship. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank
Real good program, real good information. I really appreciate it. Spotlight, of course, is seen every Tuesday at 8 p.m. here on JTV Channel 55, and you can pick us up on jtvlive.net on the World Wide Web with the major disruptor. Yes, and we also rebroadcast every Sunday afternoon at 2:30. So you can get us on demand, and all the spotlights that you've missed, you could just go online and call them up, and you could see part of, all of, whatever spotlight you've missed. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your words of encouragement. Continue to email me at jtvspotlight@yahoo.com. I'm Edjuenka, reminding you that when the spotlight is on, you see the facts. Peace and blessing.
Spotlight is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands, Clarence Thomas Limited, the BVI Tourist Board, and CCT Global Communications.